The champagne glass slipped. In that split second, Jade's entire world shattered, not from the accident, but from the venom that followed. You people need to understand your place. Victoria Sinclair's words cut through the silent ballroom like a blade. 200 guests watched. 200 witnesses to Jade's public execution. She stood frozen, trembling, waiting to disappear into the floor. Then he stood up. Dominic Gravano. The name that made grown men nervous. The face that commanded absolute silence. He walked straight toward her, not toward Victoria, toward her, and extended his hand with 3 words that would change everything. Dance with me. But this wasn't kindness. This was a declaration of war. And Jade? She was about to become the most dangerous weapon in a game she never asked to play. What happened next would either save her or destroy everything she'd fought to build. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you are hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comment section where you are watching from, because tomorrow I'll be giving you an interesting story such as this one and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Jade pressed her palms against the cold porcelain of the bathroom sink, watching water circle the drain. Her reflection stared back. Dark brown skin, edges of her twist out carefully smoothed into a low bun, white catering shirt pressed sharp enough to cut. She looked the part. Professional. Forgettable. Exactly what these events required. Just get through tonight, she told herself. 6 hours. That's $400. That's 2 textbooks and the gas bill. The Sinclair estate wasn't like the other venues. This was old money, the kind that didn't just buy chandeliers but inherited them. The staff bathroom alone was nicer than her entire apartment. All marble and gold fixtures that probably cost more than her car. She'd learned not to be impressed. These people didn't see her anyway. She was moving furniture. Necessary, functional, invisible. Jade checked her phone. 1 text from her classmate Michelle. Good luck tonight. Don't let them make you feel small. Too late for that. She'd been made small her whole life. Had learned to fold herself into whatever shape the room required. Tonight she'd be silent, efficient, and gone before anyone remembered her face. The other servers were already lining up when she entered the staging kitchen. Maria, a server she'd worked with before, caught her eye and mouthed, "Big night." Jade nodded. She'd heard the whispers. Some local politician's fundraiser. Serious money. The kind of people who'd barely register her existence unless she spilled something on them. She lifted her tray, champagne flutes arranged in perfect rows, and took a breath. The double doors to the ballroom waited ahead, Baroque handles gleaming. Beyond them, laughter and string quartet music swelled like a wave. You're a ghost, she reminded herself. In and out. Invisible. She pushed through. 15 miles away, Dominic Gravano buttoned his suit jacket and watched the city lights blur past the car window. His driver knew better than to make conversation. The silence suited him fine. "We're early, boss," said the man in the passenger seat, Sal, his oldest associate, face like weathered stone. "Good." Dominic's voice carried no inflection. He hated these events, but they were necessary. Faces needed to be shown, hands needed to be shaken, and respect needed to be maintained. He'd built his world on the understanding that power was a performance, and tonight's performance required a tailored suit and a checkbook. He wasn't always this man. There was a version of Dominic Gravano who'd laughed easily, who'd believed in the goodness of people. That version died in a tenement stairwell when he was 19, along with any illusions about how the world worked. Now he was 42, wealthy beyond measure, and emptier than he'd ever been at 19 with nothing. The car pulled up to the Sinclair mansion, all white columns and manicured hedges, the kind of place that existed to remind people of their place in the hierarchy. Dominic had been to 100 events like this. He knew the script: enter with his men, let the nervous energy ripple through the crowd, make his donation, stay exactly long enough to be remembered, and leave. The doors opened. He emerged into the golden light of the entrance hall, Sal and two others flanking him. Conversations stuttered and restarted as he passed. People smiled too wide, nodded too eagerly. Fear and respect looked the same from a distance. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across marble floors. Politicians in expensive suits clustered near the bar. Society wives dripped with diamonds and performative charity. It was all theater. Everyone playing their role. Dominic took his assigned seat at a table near the front, close enough to be seen, far enough to maintain mystique. His men stood nearby, silent sentinels. He surveyed the room with practiced detachment, noting faces, reading dynamics, calculating leverage. That's when he saw her. A server, young, black, carrying a tray of champagne with the careful concentration of someone who couldn't afford a mistake. She moved along the edge of the room like she was trying not to disturb the air itself. Something about the deliberate smallness of her movements caught his attention. The way she made herself take up less space than her body required. He recognized that posture. Had seen it in his mother's shoulders every time she cleaned houses for people who never learned her name. The server, he couldn't see her face yet, just the rigid set of her spine, disappeared into the crowd. Dominic looked away, annoyed at himself for noticing. He wasn't here to think about the help. He wasn't here to think about anything except maintaining his position and getting home. But something about her careful invisibility lingered in his mind like a splinter. The evening progressed exactly as he'd predicted. Speeches droned. Donations were announced to polite applause. Dominic wrote his check, generous enough to be remembered, not so generous as to seem desperate for approval, and prepared to leave early. Then the room's energy shifted. A woman's voice, sharp with indignation, cut through the string quartet like breaking glass. Dominic's eyes found the source immediately. The server. The one he'd noticed. She stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, tray tilted, champagne glasses trembling. In front of her, a woman in a crimson gown, Victoria Sinclair, the hostess, recoiled dramatically, gesturing at a small wet spot on her dress. "Do you have any idea how much this gown costs?" Victoria's voice carried across the sudden silence. "Of course you don't. How could you?" The server, young, maybe late 20s, with rich brown skin and eyes that held something close to panic, opened her mouth. No sound came out. Dominic's hand, reaching for his water glass, stopped midair. He watched the scene unfold like a car accident in slow motion. Inevitable and ugly. What would you do if you witnessed someone being humiliated in public? Would you intervene, or would you look away like everyone else? Victoria Sinclair didn't just speak, she performed. Her voice rose and fell with practiced outrage, each word designed to draw the room's attention like moths to flame. "Look at this." She held the edge of her crimson gown between manicured fingers, displaying a barely visible damp spot as if it were a mortal wound. Hermès, custom-fitted, flown in from Paris. "And you," she gestured at Jade with a kind of dismissive wave reserved for insects. "You just barrel through here like you own the place." Jade's throat closed. The tray shook in her hands, champagne glasses clinking together like nervous teeth. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't. It was an accident." "I can." "An accident?" Victoria's laugh was crystalline and cruel. "Is that what we're calling incompetence now?" She turned to the crowd, playing to her audience. "This is exactly what I was saying earlier, Margaret. You simply cannot find quality help anymore. They hire anyone these days." The words hung in the air, their subtext loud enough to deafen. Jade felt the weight of 200 eyes on her skin. The room had gone silent except for the string quartet, which faltered and stopped mid-phrase. She could feel her heartbeat in her fingertips, in her temples, behind her eyes. Every face turned toward her, not with sympathy, but with that particular kind of fascination people reserve for public humiliation. Entertainment. A spectacle. Breathe, she told herself. Just apologize and disappear. You need this job. Ma'am, I apologize sincerely. If you'll allow me to. To what? Ruin something else. Victoria's eyes swept over Jade with naked contempt. You people need to understand your place. You're here to serve, not to be seen. Clearly, someone forgot to mention that during your training. You people. The words landed like a slap. Jade's face burned. She wanted to vanish, to dissolve into the marble floor, to have never taken this job in the first place. Her hands trembled so badly the tray tilted, and she overcorrected, nearly dropping it entirely. Scattered laughter rippled through the crowd. Not loud, but there. Quiet chuckles from people who were grateful the spotlight wasn't on them, who found someone else's humiliation preferable to confronting the cruelty happening 3 feet away. Jade's vision blurred at the edges. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of these people. She straightened her spine, holding on to the last thread of dignity she possessed. I'll clean it immediately, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Oh, now she whispers, Victoria said to the woman beside her, loud enough for half the room to hear. A little late for discretion, don't you think? That's when Jade heard it, a chair scraping against marble. The sound cut through the ballroom's terrible silence like thunder. Every head turned. Dominic Gravano stood. Slowly, deliberately, he rose from his seat at the front table. The movement was unhurried, but it commanded attention the way a drawn gun commands attention. Absolute. Immediate. The room held its breath. Jade watched, frozen, as the man in the impeccable charcoal suit, the one she'd noticed earlier, the one whose presence had made the other guests nervous, began walking. Not toward Victoria. Toward her. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Each step measured, purposeful. His face held no expression, but something in his eyes made Jade's pulse stutter. Not cruelty. Something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. Behind him, men in dark suits shifted, tense. One moved as if to follow, but a subtle gesture from the man, barely a twitch of his fingers, stopped him cold. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a path. Victoria's triumphant smile faltered. Confusion flickered across her face, then calculation, then the first edge of fear. Dominic stopped directly in front of Jade. This close, she could see the gray at his temples, the fine lines around his eyes, the quiet intensity that radiated from him like heat. He was taller than she'd realized. Broader. The kind of presence that made the air around him feel heavier. He didn't look at Victoria. Didn't acknowledge the crowd or the silence or the collective confusion. He looked only at Jade. Then he extended his hand. Palm up. Open. An offering, not a demand. His voice, when it came, was low and steady. It wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the ballroom with perfect clarity. Dance with me. 3 words. Not a question. Not quite a command. Something in between, a statement of intent that left no room for argument but somehow still felt like a choice. Jade stared at his hand. Her mind couldn't process what was happening. This man, whoever he was asking her to dance. Here. Now. In the middle of her humiliation, in front of everyone who just watched her be torn apart. I don't, her voice cracked. I'm working, I can't. You can. His eyes held hers. There was something in them she couldn't name. Not pity. Not charity. Something fiercer. Put down the tray. Her hands moved before her mind caught up. She set the tray on a nearby table, champagne glasses still trembling. When she looked back, his hand was still extended, patient and unwavering. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Jade's fingers, still shaking, reached out. The moment her hand touched his, something shifted. Not just in the room, but in the architecture of the evening itself. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not crushing. He didn't pull her forward. He waited for her to step toward him. She did. The crowd murmured, a low buzz of shock and confusion. Victoria's face had gone white, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Someone whispered, "Is that?" Another voice hissed, "Does he know who she is?" Dominic led Jade to the center of the ballroom, the same spot where she'd been humiliated moments before. He positioned them there deliberately, claiming the space, rewriting its meaning. He placed one hand at her waist, not possessive but steady, an anchor. With his other hand, he held hers gently, respectfully. The string quartet, sensing the shift, exchanged confused glances before the conductor, with visible uncertainty, lifted his baton. A waltz began. Slow, classical, elegant. Jade's body was rigid, locked in shock and confusion. Her mind screamed 1,000 questions. Who is this man? Why is he doing this? What does he want? Breathe, Dominic said quietly. Just for her. Look at me, not them. Her eyes snapped to his face. This close, she could see the weariness there, hidden beneath the authority. Lines that spoke of hard years. But his gaze on her was steady, almost gentle. I don't know how to, she started. Just follow. I've got you. He moved, and somehow her feet followed. One step, then another. She stumbled slightly, and his hand at her waist steadied her without judgment. The room blurred around them, all those watching faces, the glittering chandeliers, Victoria's frozen outrage. All of it faded into background noise. It was just the two of them and the music. Jade's breath came in short gasps. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Because they were waiting for you to disappear. I'm making sure they remember you instead. The words hit her chest like a fist. Not with force but with weight. She felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry. Not now. Not when he'd just given her back something she'd thought was lost. They turned slowly across the marble floor. Jade became aware of her hand in his fingers warm against hers. Of his other hand at her waist, respectful, protective. Of the way he moved with absolute confidence, guiding her through steps she didn't know but somehow followed anyway. The song built toward its crescendo. Around them, the room remained suspended in shocked silence. No one moved. No one spoke. They simply watched as the most powerful man in the room danced with a woman who, 60 seconds ago, they'd been laughing at. As the final notes faded, Dominic slowed their movement. They came to rest in the center of the floor, exactly where Victoria had tried to destroy her. He released her waist but held her hand a moment longer. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, so brief it might have been accidental, but Jade felt it like electricity. Thank you for the dance, he said, his voice quiet but carrying nonetheless. Then he let go, stepped back, and gave her the slightest nod, a gesture of respect, of acknowledgement, of seeing her as an equal in a room that never would. He turned and walked back to his table, his men falling into formation around him. He didn't look at Victoria, didn't address the crowd, didn't explain or justify. He simply returned to his seat as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But everything had happened. Jade stood alone in the center of the ballroom, her heart hammering, her skin flushed, her mind unable to process the last 3 minutes of her life. Slowly, sound returned to the room. Uncertain conversations, nervous laughter, the clink of glasses. Victoria had disappeared. Several guests had turned away, suddenly fascinated by their drinks. Others stared at Jade with something new in their eyes. Not quite respect, but close. Recognition, at least. She was no longer invisible. Maria appeared at her elbow, grabbing her arm. Jade, we need to get you out of here. Now. Who was? Later. Come on. As Maria pulled her toward the service entrance, Jade looked back once. Her eyes found him across the room. Dominic Gravano, whose name she didn't yet know, but whose hand she could still feel on her waist. He wasn't looking at her. He was staring at his water glass, his face unreadable. But she could have sworn, just for a second, that she saw his jaw tighten. Saw something that looked like regret, or maybe recognition of a line he'd just crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Then the service door closed behind her, and he was gone. But the feeling of his hand in hers remained, burned into her palm like a brand. The staff kitchen smelled like industrial detergent and anxiety. Jade leaned against the metal prep counter, her hands gripping the edge so hard her knuckles went pale. Around her, the other servers had formed a loose circle, their voices overlapping in urgent whispers. Do you have any idea who that was? Dominic Gravano. The Dominic Gravano. She's dead. She's actually dead. Will someone shut up and let her breathe? Maria stood closest, one hand on Jade's shoulder, her expression caught between concern and fear. Jade. Talk to me. Are you okay? Was she okay? Jade didn't know how to answer that. Her heart still hammered against her ribs. Her palm still tingled where his hand had held hers. Her body felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone who just danced with a stranger in front of 200 people who'd been laughing at her seconds before. I don't understand what just happened, Jade whispered. Why did he? Gravano doesn't do anything without a reason, said Marcus, one of the bartenders, his voice low and urgent. He owns half the construction contracts in the city. The other half he controls. People don't cross him. People don't even look at him wrong. So why? That's what we're trying to figure out. Marcus glanced at the door like someone might be listening. Maybe he was making a point to Sinclair. Maybe he was embarrassed by how she acted. Or maybe... He looked at Jade with something close to pity. Maybe he wants something from you. The words landed like ice water. Jade's stomach twisted. No. Maria cut in sharply. Don't do that. Don't make this girl paranoid. I'm being realistic. Men like that don't rescue waitresses out of the goodness of their hearts. He didn't rescue me, Jade said, her voice stronger than she felt. He asked me to dance. That's all. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. It hadn't been just a dance. It had been a statement, a challenge, a complete disruption of the room's power structure. And she'd been caught in the middle of it, used or protected or both. She couldn't tell which. The kitchen door swung open. Everyone went silent. Richard Chen, the catering company owner, stepped inside. His face was red, his tie loosened, sweat beading at his temples. His eyes found Jade immediately. You. My office. Now. Jade's heart dropped into her stomach. This was it. She was fired. Of course she was fired. You didn't survive making a scene at an event like this, even if the scene wasn't your fault. Maria squeezed her shoulder. I'll come with you. Alone, Richard snapped. The walk to his makeshift office, a converted pantry near the service entrance, felt like a funeral march. Jade's mind raced through calculations. She had maybe $300 in her account. Rent was due in 2 weeks. She'd already pushed back her tuition payment once. This was supposed to be simple, she thought bitterly. Serve drinks. Collect a check. Go home. Richard closed the door and turned to face her. For a long moment, he just stared, his expression unreadable. I should fire you, he said finally. Jade's throat tightened. Mr. Chen, I didn't. I know you didn't. I saw what happened. Victoria Sinclair is a vindictive witch who gets off on humiliating people she thinks are beneath her. He rubbed his face. But that doesn't change the fact that you created a situation. I didn't create anything. Dominic Gravano created the situation. And you were the reason. Richard's voice softened slightly, but not enough to be comforting. Do you understand the position that puts me in? Victoria's already called me twice demanding your termination. I've got board members asking questions. This was supposed to be a simple event, and now it's, he gestured helplessly, complicated. So fire me. Jade's voice came out flat. She was too exhausted to fight. If that's what you're going to do, just do it. Richard sighed. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward her. It was a text message. Short. Direct. The girl who served my table tonight. Jade. She works the rest of the evening at my table only. Non-negotiable. DG. Jade stared at the message. When did you get this? 20 minutes ago. Right after your dance. Richard pocketed his phone. So here's what's going to happen. You're going back out there. You're going to serve Gravano's table for the rest of the event. You're going to be professional, invisible, and silent. And when this night is over, you and I are going to have a conversation about whether you continue working for this company. Understood. Jade wanted to refuse. Wanted to walk out right now, collect whatever dignity she had left, and never come back. But $400. Textbooks. Gas bill. The reality of her life didn't allow for pride. Understood, she whispered. Dominic stared at his whiskey glass and tried to figure out what the hell he'd just done. Across the table, Sal leaned in, his voice barely above a murmur. Boss, we need to talk about what happened out there. No, we don't. With respect, yeah, we do. Sal's jaw was tight. You know how this looks. You know what people are gonna say. I don't care what people say. Maybe you should. Sal glanced around to make sure no one was listening. You made a statement tonight. The Sinclair woman? She's connected. Her husband sits on the zoning board. You just publicly humiliated her. She humiliated herself. Dominic's voice was cold. I corrected the situation. By dancing with the help? The words hit wrong. Dominic's eyes snapped up, and whatever Sal saw there made him lean back immediately, hands raised in placation. Sorry. That came out wrong. I'm just saying, it sends a message we might not want sent. What message? That you're soft. That you can be manipulated by, Sal struggled for words, by sentiment. By emotion. That's dangerous in our line of work. Dominic returned his attention to his whiskey. The glass was expensive crystal, probably worth more than that girl. Jade, the text had said her name was Jade, made in a month. He thought about her hand in his, trembling. About the way she'd looked at him, confused and terrified and something else. Grateful, maybe. Or just shocked. He'd seen his mother in her face. Seen every person who'd ever been made small by people with power and no conscience. And something in him, something he'd thought he'd buried years ago, had snapped. I'm not soft, Dominic said quietly. And I'm not manipulated. I saw something that needed correcting, and I corrected it. That's all. You sure that's all? Sal's voice carried a note of concern. Because from where I was sitting, it looked personal. It had been personal. That was the problem. Dominic couldn't explain why. Couldn't articulate the specific combination of factors that had made him stand up. The cruelty in Victoria Sinclair's voice, the way the crowd had laughed, the rigid set of Jade's shoulders as she tried not to break. It had been like watching his mother get torn apart all over again, except this time he had the power to stop it. So he had. And now he didn't know what to do with the aftermath. She's coming back, one of his men murmured. Dominic looked up. Across the ballroom, Jade was emerging from the service entrance. She'd composed herself. Her face was neutral, her posture professional. But he could see the tension in her movements, the way she held herself like she was made of glass. She was carrying a new tray, heading toward his table. Their eyes met across the room. Just for a second. She looked away first, but not before he saw something flicker in her expression. Fear, definitely. But also confusion. Maybe even anger. Good, he thought. Anger was safer than gratitude. She reached the table and set down fresh napkins with mechanical precision. Didn't look at him. Didn't speak. Jade. Her name felt strange in his mouth. She froze. Yes, sir. You don't need to call me sir. It's protocol. Her voice was carefully neutral. Can I get you anything? He wanted to ask if she was all right. Wanted to explain why he'd done what he'd done. Wanted to tell her she didn't need to be afraid of him, that he'd handled the threat, that Victoria Sinclair would never bother her again. But all of that required a conversation they couldn't have here, surrounded by his men and 200 watching guests. Another whiskey, he said instead. Neat. Right away. She turned to leave, but he caught her wrist, gently, barely any pressure. She gasped, startled, and looked down at his hand on her arm. You didn't do anything wrong tonight, Dominic said quietly. I need you to know that. Jade's eyes met his. Up close, he could see they were dark brown, almost black, and currently bright with unshed tears. Then why do I feel like my life just fell apart? She pulled her arm free and walked away before he could answer. Because he didn't have an answer. Or rather, he did, but it wasn't one she wanted to hear. Because I pulled you into my world, and my world destroys everything it touches. Sal was watching him with an unreadable expression. You okay, boss? Fine. You don't look fine. Dominic drained his whiskey in one swallow. Get the car ready. We're leaving in 20 minutes. What about the girl? What about her? You just told Chen she had to work our table all night. I changed my mind. Dominic stood, buttoning his jacket. She's been through enough. As he headed for the exit, he didn't look back. Didn't try to catch one last glimpse of her. That would be weakness, and he couldn't afford weakness. But her words followed him anyway, echoing in his mind like an accusation. Why do I feel like my life just fell apart? Because it had. And he was the one who'd broken it. Jade watched from the kitchen doorway as Dominic Gravano and his entourage left the ballroom. She told herself she felt relieved. Told herself she was glad he was gone, glad she wouldn't have to serve him again, glad this bizarre night could finally end. She told herself a lot of things. None of them explained why her wrist still burned where he'd touched it. Or why she felt more alone now than she had when the entire room was laughing at her. Jade lasted exactly 45 minutes before her phone rang. She was in the staff room, changing back into her street clothes, when Richard's name flashed across the screen. Her stomach dropped. She considered not answering, but that would only delay the inevitable. Hello, Jade. Where are you? Richard's voice was clipped, professional. Staff room. I was just. Come to the main entrance. Now. The line went dead. Jade stared at her phone, dread pooling in her gut. This was it. The firing she'd been expecting. He'd probably waited until the event was winding down to avoid a scene. Professional to the end. She pulled her coat on slowly, buying time. Maria had already left. Her shift ended early. The other servers avoided eye contact, probably grateful it was Jade getting called to the principal's office and not them. The walk to the main entrance felt eternal. Through the service corridors, past the kitchen where cleanup crews were already breaking down stations. Through the door that separated staff spaces from guest spaces. The ballroom was nearly empty now. Just stragglers finishing conversations and collecting coats. Richard stood near the entrance, and next to him. Jade stopped walking. Dominic Gravano stood in the foyer, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. He'd put on a long black coat that made him look even more imposing. Behind him, his men waited near a black SUV visible through the glass doors. Mr. Chen. Jade's voice came out smaller than she wanted. Change of plans, Richard said, and something in his tone made Jade's skin prickle. Not angry. Almost apologetic. Mr. Gravano has requested you accompany him. The words didn't make sense. I'm sorry, what? It's not a request. Richard glanced at Dominic nervously. He's insisting, and given the circumstances, I think it's best if you cooperate. Fear spiked through Jade's chest. I don't understand. Cooperate with what? Dominic spoke for the first time, his voice low and measured. We need to talk. Privately. It won't take long. No. The word came out sharp, defensive. I don't know you. I'm not going anywhere with you. Jade, Richard started. No. She took a step back, her heart hammering. I don't care who he is. I'm not getting in a car with a stranger because he requested it. That's insane. Something flickered in Dominic's expression. Not anger. Something softer. Almost like approval. You're right, he said. It is insane. But there are things you need to know about tonight. Things that affect your safety. My safety. Jade's voice rose. The only thing affecting my safety right now is this conversation. I want to go home. I want to leave. I'm done. Jade, please. Richard looked genuinely panicked now. Just hear him out. 5 minutes. Why? What does he have on you? She turned to Richard, anger overriding fear. What did he threaten you with to make you? He didn't threaten me. Richard's voice dropped. He offered to triple your pay for tonight. And to personally ensure you keep your job. But only if you give him 5 minutes. The words knocked the wind from her lungs. Triple pay. That was $1,200. That was textbooks and rent and the gas bill and groceries. That was breathing room she desperately needed. It was also a cage. Jade looked at Dominic. Really looked at him. He stood perfectly still, patient, his dark eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her chest tight. There was something in his face. Not cruelty, not manipulation. Something that looked almost like regret. 5 minutes, she heard herself say. In the parking lot. Where there are cameras. And people. Dominic nodded once. That's fair. The parking lot was well lit, cold wind cutting through Jade's coat as she stood near the building's entrance. Dominic stood 10 feet away, giving her space. His men remained by the SUV, far enough to offer privacy but close enough to remind her exactly who she was talking to. You said 5 minutes. Jade crossed her arms, more for warmth than defiance. Start talking. Dominic was quiet for a moment, his breath misting in the cold air. When he spoke, His voice was quieter than she expected. Victoria Sinclair is vindictive. What I did tonight, dancing with you, it humiliated her in front of people whose opinion she values. She won't forget that. So you're saying I'm in danger because you decided to make a point? I'm saying you were already in danger the moment she decided to humiliate you. I just changed the nature of it. He took a step closer, and Jade resisted the urge to retreat. People like Victoria, they need targets. You were tonight's target. If I hadn't intervened, she'd have had you fired, blacklisted, maybe worse. At least now, she knows you're protected. Protected. Jade laughed, but there was no humor in it. I don't need protection. I needed a job. I needed to be invisible. I needed, her voice cracked, I needed tonight to just be normal. Normal is what got you targeted in the first place. Dominic's eyes held hers. You think making yourself small keeps you safe, but it doesn't. It just makes you easier prey. The words hit too close to something true. Jade looked away, blinking against the sting of cold wind and unwanted tears. What do you want from me? She whispered. Why am I really here? Because I need you to understand something. Dominic's voice was steady, almost gentle. What happened tonight can't be undone. People saw. People will talk. Your name is going to come up in conversations I can't control. And if Victoria or anyone else tries to retaliate against you, I need to know about it immediately. He pulled out a business card and held it toward her. Simple, black, with just a phone number embossed in silver. Jade didn't take it. I'm not calling you. If someone threatens you, you will. I can handle myself. Can you? There was no mockery in the question, just honest inquiry. Can you handle getting followed home? Getting threatening messages? Getting your tires slashed or your apartment broken into? Because those are the kinds of things that happen when you embarrass people like Victoria Sinclair. Ice flooded Jade's veins. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to prepare you. Dominic stepped closer, and this time Jade did retreat until her back hit the building wall. He stopped immediately, giving her space, but his eyes never left hers. I know what it's like to be powerless. To watch someone you care about get destroyed by people who see them as less than human. I won't watch it happen again. Not when I can prevent it. There was something raw in his voice, something that spoke of old wounds. Jade found herself searching his face, looking for the threat everyone kept warning her about. But all she saw was intensity and something that looked almost like pain. Who did you lose? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Dominic's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my mother. She worked as a maid for a family not unlike the Sinclairs. They treated her like furniture. When she got sick, they fired her. No severance, no health care. She died 6 months later. He paused. I was 19. Couldn't do anything to help her. Couldn't make them see her as human. I swore I'd never be powerless like that again. The confession hung between them, heavy with grief and rage. Jade felt her defenses crack slightly. This wasn't manipulation. It was the truth, raw and painful and offered without expectation of reciprocation. I'm sorry, she said quietly. That's horrible. It was reality. Still is, for too many people. Dominic pulled the business card back slightly, but kept it visible. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to be smart. If something happens, anything that feels wrong or threatening, you call that number. That's all. Jade looked at the card. Every instinct screamed that taking it meant accepting something she wasn't ready to accept. Meant acknowledging that tonight had changed something fundamental about her life. But he wasn't wrong about Victoria Sinclair. Wasn't wrong about the danger of being noticed by the wrong people. Slowly, reluctantly, Jade reached out and took the card. The thick paper was warm from being in his coat pocket. 5 minutes are up, she said. Dominic nodded. He didn't smile, didn't look relieved or satisfied. Just accepted her boundary. One more thing. He gestured to one of his men, who approached with an envelope. Dominic handed it to Jade. Your pay, plus the agreed-upon bonus. Jade opened it and froze. There had to be at least $1,500 inside. More than triple her normal rate. This is too much. It's exactly right. You earned every dollar tonight. Dominic took a step back, creating distance. My driver will take you home. It's late, and I'd prefer you didn't take public transportation. I'm not getting in your car. It's not my car. It's a car. With a driver who will take you directly home and nowhere else. He pulled out his phone. You can track the route on your phone if it makes you feel safer. You can call someone and stay on the line the whole time. Whatever you need. Jade wanted to refuse. Wanted to walk away on her own terms, take the bus like always, maintain what little independence she had left. But it was nearly 11 p.m. The bus route from here involved 2 transfers and a 15-minute walk through an area that made her nervous even in daylight. Fine, she said. But I'm calling my friend. And if this driver takes one wrong turn, I'm calling the police. Good. Dominic gestured to a different vehicle. A dark sedan, not the SUV. A woman emerged from the driver's side, middle-aged, professional-looking. This is Angela. She'll get you home safely. The woman nodded politely. Ma'am. Jade looked between them, still waiting for the trap to reveal itself. But Angela seemed genuine, and Dominic was already walking back toward the SUV, the conversation apparently over. Wait, Jade called out. He turned, one hand on the SUV's door. Why did you really dance with me? And don't tell me it was about Victoria or making a statement. What was it really about? Dominic was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible over the wind. Because you reminded me of someone who deserved better than she got. And I was tired of watching history repeat itself. Then he got in the SUV and drove away, leaving Jade standing in the cold with an envelope full of cash, a mysterious business card, and more questions than answers. Angela cleared her throat gently. Whenever you're ready, ma'am. Jade pulled out her phone and dialed Michelle's number. Her friend answered on the second ring. Girl, where have you been? I've been worried. I'm fine. But I need you to stay on the phone with me. I'm getting a ride home, and it's complicated. I'll explain everything, but right now I just need you to talk to me. Of course. I'm here. Jade climbed into the sedan's back seat, keeping her phone pressed to her ear as Angela pulled smoothly out of the parking lot. Through the window, she could see the Sinclair mansion receding into the distance, its windows still glowing with golden light. She looked down at the business card in her hand. No name. Just a number. She should throw it away. Should forget this entire night ever happened. Instead, she slipped it into her pocket and tried to convince herself it didn't feel like the beginning of something she couldn't control. What would you do if someone powerful offered you protection you never asked for? Would you accept it, or would you walk away to keep your independence? 3 days passed without incident. Jade went to her classes, worked her afternoon shift at the diner, came home to her studio apartment and tried to convince herself that everything was back to normal. The envelope of cash sat on her kitchen counter, mostly untouched except for what she'd used to pay rent early. Every time she looked at it, she felt something twist in her chest. Gratitude and resentment tangled together so tightly she couldn't separate them. The business card lived in her coat pocket. She told herself she'd throw it away. She never did. Michelle had listened to the whole story that night in the car, her reactions ranging from shock to concern to something that sounded uncomfortably close to excitement. Girl, this is like something out of a movie. A mafia boss dancing with you? Giving you his personal number. He's not a mafia boss, Jade had insisted, though she had no evidence to support that claim. He's just someone with money and influence. Dangerous money and influence. You need to stay away from him. Jade had agreed. Had meant it even. So why did she keep checking her phone, half expecting a call that never came? On the fourth day, everything changed. Jade was walking from the bus stop to her apartment, grocery bags cutting into her palms, when she noticed the car. Black sedan, tinted windows, parked across the street from her building. It had been there yesterday too. And the day before. Her heartbeat kicked up. She tried to tell herself it was paranoia, that plenty of people owned black sedans, that she was being ridiculous. But Dominic's words echoed in her mind. Can you handle getting followed home? Getting threatening messages? Jade walked faster. The car didn't move, but she felt eyes on her back. She fumbled with her keys at the apartment door, dropped them, cursed under her breath. Finally got inside and locked the door behind her, breathing hard. You're being paranoid, she told herself. Nothing happened. You're fine. But she wasn't fine. Her hands shook as she put the groceries away. She kept glancing at the window, half expecting to see someone staring back. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Jade's stomach dropped. She stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. Hello. Silence. Then a woman's voice, cold and cultured, the girl from the party. Jade's mouth went dry. Who is this? You know who this is. Victoria Sinclair's voice was silk over steel. I'm calling to offer you some advice. Free of charge, since you clearly need it. I don't want. Whatever fantasy you're entertaining about Dominic Gravano, end it now. Men like him don't care about girls like you. You were a momentary amusement, a way for him to embarrass me. That's all. Victoria paused, letting the words sink in. But you've served your purpose. Now it's time for you to disappear back into whatever hole you crawled out of. Do you understand? Rage flared hot in Jade's chest, burning through the fear. I'm not entertaining any fantasy. I didn't ask for any of this. You were the one who. Who what? Put you in your place? That's what happens when people forget where they belong. Victoria's voice hardened. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to quit your catering job. You're going to make sure you're never at any event I attend. And you're going to forget you ever met Dominic Gravano. If you don't. If I don't, what? Jade's voice was steadier than she felt. You'll do what exactly? The pause was long enough to be threatening. I know where you live, Jade. I know where you go to school. I know you take the 47 bus every Tuesday and Thursday evening. I know your landlord has been looking for a reason to evict someone from your building. Rent violations, noise complaints, it doesn't take much. I know your scholarship has a morality clause. Do you want me to keep going? Ice flooded Jade's veins. Victoria wasn't making empty threats. She'd done her homework. You can't. I can do whatever I want. That's the difference between people like me and people like you. Victoria's voice softened into something almost kind, which somehow made it worse. I'm not unreasonable. I'm simply asking you to return to your life. Stay away from Gravano. Stay away from my circles. Become invisible again. It's what you're good at, isn't it? The line went dead. Jade stood in her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, listening to dead air. Her whole body trembled, with fear, with rage, with the horrible realization that Victoria Sinclair could destroy her life with a few phone calls and Jade would have no recourse, no defense, no power. Unless... She pulled out the business card with shaking fingers. Stared at the silver numbers embossed on black cardstock. I need you to understand something. If someone threatens you, you call that number immediately. Jade's thumb hovered over her phone screen. This was exactly what Dominic had warned her about. Exactly the situation he'd said might happen. But calling him meant admitting she couldn't handle this alone. Meant accepting his protection, his involvement, his presence in her life. Meant surrendering the independence she'd fought so hard to maintain. The black sedan was still parked outside her window. Jade made the call. Dominic was in a meeting when his private line rang. The fact that it was ringing at all made everyone in the room go still. Only 4 people had that number, and 3 of them were sitting at this table. The 4th. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. But there was only one person it could be. We'll continue this later, Dominic said, already standing. His men exchanged glances but knew better than to question him. He stepped into his private office and closed the door. Jade. How did you? Her voice was tight, strained. I didn't tell you my name. On the card, I mean. How did you know it was me? Because no one else has that number. He kept his voice calm, controlled, even though something in her tone set off alarm bells. What happened? She took a shaky breath. Victoria Sinclair called me. And there's a car outside my apartment. It's been there for 3 days. Dominic's hand tightened on the phone. What did she say? Jade told him. Every word of Victoria's threats, her voice gaining strength as she recounted the conversation. By the end, she sounded more angry than afraid, which was good. Anger was useful. Fear paralyzed. Where are you now? Dominic was already moving, grabbing his coat, gesturing through the glass for Sal. My apartment. I'm inside. Doors are locked. Stay there. I'm sending someone to watch your building until I arrive. Wait, you're coming here? Panic crept into her voice. No. I don't need you to. I just wanted to tell you what happened. You said to call if. And you did the right thing. Dominic was already in the elevator, Sal beside him, phone to his ear calling for backup. But Victoria's escalating faster than I expected. That car outside your apartment? That's surveillance. She's trying to intimidate you, gathering information. This doesn't end with a phone call. So what does it end with? Jade's voice was small now, scared. What do I do? You let me handle it. The elevator doors open to the parking garage. But first, I need to make sure you're safe. Give me your address. She hesitated. He could hear her breathing, the sound of her weighing options she didn't really have. Finally, she gave him the address. 20 minutes, Dominic said. Don't open the door for anyone else. He hung up before she could argue. Sal waited until they were in the car before speaking. Boss, is this really the move? Getting personally involved with. With what? Dominic's voice was sharp. With someone who's being threatened because I made her a target? Yes, Sal. This is exactly the move. I'm just saying, there are other ways to handle this. We could make a call, send someone to have a conversation with Sinclair's people. Victoria Sinclair isn't her people. She's acting alone, which makes her unpredictable. Dominic stared out the window as the city blurred past. And this isn't just about tonight. It's about sending a message that people under my protection stay protected. Is that what this is? Protection? Dominic didn't answer. Because he didn't know how to explain the feeling that had been gnawing at him for 4 days. The memory of Jade's hand in his, The sound of her voice asking, "Why do I feel like my life just fell apart?" The way she'd looked at him in the parking lot, scared but defiant, refusing to be cowed even when she had every reason to be. He'd told himself it was about his mother. About correcting an old injustice. About power and principle. But somewhere between the dance and the phone call, it had become about Jade herself. About the woman who'd taken his business card reluctantly, who'd accepted his help on her own terms, who was calling him now not because she was helpless but because she was smart enough to recognize a threat she couldn't handle alone. The drive to her neighborhood took 18 minutes. Dominic spent them making calls. To his lawyer, to a private investigator, to the man who handled his more delicate problems. By the time they pulled up to Jade's building, the black sedan that had been surveilling her was gone, and two of his own people had taken up positions across the street. Jade's building was a converted walk-up in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. The kind of place where people minded their own business because they had enough problems of their own. Dominic climbed the stairs to the third floor, Sal following silently. Apartment 3C. He knocked twice. "Who is it?" Jade's voice came through the door. "Dominic." A pause. Then the sound of locks turning. 3 of them, he counted. The door opened a crack, chain still attached. Jade peered through, her dark eyes wary. "Can I come in?" She studied him for a long moment, then closed the door. He heard the chain slide free. When the door opened again, she stepped back to let him enter. Dominic took in the apartment in one sweep. Small, meticulously clean, furnished with thrift store finds and determination. Textbooks stacked on a tiny desk. A single plant on the windowsill, thriving despite the limited light. The whole space was maybe 400 square feet, but it was clearly hers, organized, cared for, a life built from nothing with careful hands. "You didn't have to come," Jade said, closing the door. She'd changed from her work clothes into jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Without the catering uniform, she looked younger, more vulnerable. "Yes, I did." Dominic gestured to the window. "The car outside is gone. But I have people watching your building now. They'll stay until this situation is resolved." "People watching my building. That's supposed to make me feel better." She crossed her arms. "Now there are more strangers tracking my movements. These strangers work for me. They're here to protect you, not threaten you." "And what's the difference, really?" Jade's voice rose. "You're still controlling my life. Victoria Sinclair wants me invisible. You want me protected. Neither of you is asking what I want." The accusation landed. Dominic absorbed it, recognized the truth in it. "You're right. So tell me, what do you want?" "I want my life back." The words burst out of her, raw and frustrated. "I want to go to work without looking over my shoulder. I want to take the bus without wondering if I'm being followed. I want to just be normal again." "You were never going to be normal after what Victoria did to you at that party." "No." Jade stepped closer, anger bright in her eyes. "I wasn't going to be normal after what you did. You're the one who made me visible. You're the one who turned me into a statement. I didn't ask for any of this. You think I should have let her destroy you?" Dominic's voice hardened. "Let her humiliate you and face no consequences? I think you should have considered that maybe I was surviving just fine being invisible. Maybe I didn't need you to rescue me." Tears streaked down her face now, and she wiped them away angrily. "You don't know what it's like, trying to build something from nothing. Every dollar matters. Every shift matters. Every day I wake up and fight to stay in school, to keep my apartment, to prove I deserve to take up space in this world. And then you," she gestured helplessly, "you swoop in and destroy all of that because you felt guilty about your mother." The words hit like a physical blow. Dominic went very still. That's what this is about, isn't it? Jade's voice dropped, but the intensity remained. You saw your mother in me. Saw a chance to rewrite history, to be the hero you couldn't be when you were 19. But I'm not your mother. I'm not your redemption. I'm just a woman trying to survive, and you made that so much harder. The silence stretched between them, heavy with truth. Finally, Dominic spoke. His voice was quiet, stripped of its usual authority. You're right. About all of it. He sat slowly on the edge of her worn couch, suddenly looking older, more tired. I did see my mother in you. And I did act without thinking about what you wanted. But, he looked up at her, I can't undo it. I can't go back and let that moment play out differently. All I can do is make sure you survive what comes next. Jade sank into the chair across from him, exhausted. And what comes next? I make Victoria Sinclair understand that threatening you means threatening me. I make it clear that you're under my protection, permanently, and any move against you is a move against my organization. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. She'll back down. People like her always do when they realize the cost is too high. And then what? I just live under your protection forever? That's not a life. That's a cage. It's temporary. Once Victoria backs down, once the message is sent, you can go back to being invisible if that's what you want. He paused. But Jade, I don't think invisible is what you really want. I think you're tired of being invisible. I think you're angry that you have to make yourself small to survive. The word struck something deep inside her. Jade looked away, jaw tight. Maybe I am angry, she said finally. But that doesn't mean I want your kind of visibility. The kind that comes with surveillance and threats and protection I never asked for. Then what kind do you want? The question hung in the air. Jade had no answer. She'd spent so long focused on survival that she'd never let herself imagine what else might be possible. Dominic stood. I should go. My people will stay outside. They'll be invisible. You won't even know they're there. And I'll handle Victoria. He moved toward the door, but Jade's voice stopped him. Wait. I need to know something. She stood as well, wrapping her arms around herself. That night. The dance. Was any of it real? Or was I just a convenient symbol for something you needed to prove? Dominic turned back, and for a moment his carefully constructed walls dropped. She saw something raw in his face, regret, longing, something she couldn't quite name. The dance was the first real thing I've done in 20 years, he said quietly. Everything else is business, strategy, performance. But when I held your hand, when I saw you refuse to break despite everything they were doing to you, that was real. Maybe too real. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving Jade alone with her questions and the ghost of his honesty. She walked to the window and looked down at the street. Two men in casual clothes leaned against a building across the way, reading phones, looking like nothing. But she knew what they were now. Knew they were there because of her. Jade pulled out her phone and looked at her bank account. The money from that night was still there. Enough to breathe for a month. Maybe 2. Blood money, maybe. Or maybe just the price of being seen. She didn't know which scared her more. 2 weeks later, Jade's phone rang at midnight. She almost didn't answer. Had taught herself to ignore unknown numbers after Victoria's call. But something made her look at the screen. The number was familiar. She'd memorized it without meaning to. Hello. It's handled. Dominic's voice was quieter than she remembered. Victoria won't be a problem anymore. The surveillance is gone. You're safe. Jade sat up in bed, heart pounding. What did you do? Nothing permanent. just made it clear that the cost of continuing would be too high. He paused. I'm calling because I thought you'd want to know. And because I owe you an apology. A real one. You don't. I do. You were right about everything you said. I used you to settle an old score with the world. That wasn't fair. His voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. But I want you to know something. That dance wasn't about my mother. It was about you. About the way you held yourself together when they wanted you to break. I've spent 20 years watching people crumble under pressure. You didn't. That's rare. Jade's throat tightened. Why are you? Because you deserve the truth. And because, he hesitated, I'd like to see you again. No protection, no threats, no business. Just as people. If you're willing. She should say no. Should thank him for handling Victoria and hang up and return to her life. Where? She heard herself ask. There's a jazz club downtown. Small. Quiet. No one who matters goes there. He gave her the address. Tomorrow night, if you want. But Jade. Only if you want. No obligation. No pressure. She thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, he agreed, and she could hear the smile in his voice. The club was small and dimly lit, tucked between buildings like a secret. Jade found Dominic in a corner booth, wearing jeans and a simple shirt instead of his usual suit. He looked different. More human. You came, he said, standing as she approached. I'm still deciding if that was smart. Probably wasn't. He gestured to the seat across from him. But I'm glad anyway. They talked. Really talked. Not about Victoria or threats or protection, but about real things. He told her about growing up in a tenement, about watching his mother work herself to death for people who never saw her. About the moment he decided he'd rather be feared than invisible. Jade told him about her mother's death, about the scholarship that saved her, about the exhaustion of fighting every day to prove she deserved space in rooms that didn't want her there. You remind me of her, Dominic said quietly. My mother. Not because you're helpless. You're not. But because you have the same strength she had. The kind that doesn't show until it's tested. Is that why you really asked me to dance? No. I asked you to dance because I was tired of being the kind of man who watches injustice and does nothing. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. But I kept thinking about you because of who you are. Not who you reminded me of. Jade's fingers moved closer to his. This is dangerous. Everything worth doing is. Their hands met in the middle of the table, and for the first time since that night at the Sinclair estate, Jade felt something other than fear. She felt possibility. The photo appeared online 2 days later. Jade and Dominic at the jazz club, hands touching across the table. The caption read, Mafia boss's new obsession, from waitress to mistress? Jade's phone exploded. Texts from classmates, calls from the catering company, emails from people she'd never heard of. Her scholarship committee requested a meeting. Her landlord mentioned concerns about her associations. Michelle showed up at her apartment with coffee and worry. Girl, this is everywhere. People are talking. Not good talk. I didn't do anything wrong. But Jade's voice shook. Doesn't matter. You're associated with him now. That's enough. The final blow came that evening. An email from the scholarship committee. They were re-evaluating her eligibility, based on recent publicity that conflicts with the program's values. Jade stared at her laptop screen, watching her future crumble into pixels and bureaucratic language. Everything she'd built. Everything she'd fought for. Gone because she'd dared to be visible. When Dominic called that night, she answered with ice in her voice. Did you know? She asked. Did you know this would happen? Jade. Answer the question. Did you know that being seen with you would destroy everything I've worked for? I knew there might be complications. Complications. Her laugh was bitter. I'm losing my scholarship. My landlord wants me out. People at school won't look at me. This isn't a complication. This is my life ending. I can fix this. I have lawyers. I can talk to the scholarship committee. With what? More money? More threats? That's your solution to everything, isn't it? Tears streamed down her face now. You don't understand. I don't want to be saved by you. I don't want to need you. I just wanted to build something that was mine. Let me help. You've helped enough. Her voice broke. Whatever this was, it's over. Don't call me again. Don't send your people to watch my building. Don't fix things. Just leave me alone. Jade, please. She hung up, turned off her phone, sat in the dark of her apartment and let herself break in a way she hadn't allowed since her mother died. Have you ever had to choose between your heart and your future? Which would you choose, and could you live with the consequences? Dominic spent 3 days destroying everyone responsible for the photo. The photographer lost his credentials. The website took down the article and issued an apology. The people who'd shared it found their own secrets suddenly less private. It was brutal, efficient, and completely unsatisfying. Because none of it brought Jade back. Sal found him in his office on the 4th day, staring at nothing. Boss. We've got the meeting with the Castellano family in an hour. Cancel it. We've been trying to set this up for months. I said cancel it. Dominic's voice was flat. And get me everything on Jade's scholarship committee. Board members, donors, anyone with influence. You're going to strong-arm a scholarship committee? I'm going to make sure she doesn't lose everything because of me. Sal was quiet for a moment. With respect, boss. Maybe that's not what she wants. Maybe she wants you to respect her choice. The words landed like a blow. Because Sal was right. Jade had told him to leave her alone, and here he was, preparing to bulldoze through her boundaries again. Dominic leaned back in his chair. So what do I do? Just let her lose everything. You let her fight her own battles. And if she wants your help, she'll ask. And if she doesn't? Sal's expression softened. Then you live with it. That's what caring about someone actually means. Jade spent 3 days fighting. She met with the scholarship committee and defended herself. Argued that her personal life had no bearing on her academic performance. Provided documentation of her grades, her volunteer work, her contributions to campus life. They listened politely and said they'd be in touch. She met with her landlord and negotiated. Showed her perfect payment history, her quiet tenancy, her respect for the building. He agreed to hold off on eviction but warned her about image issues. She went to class and ignored the stares. Held her head high when people whispered. Refused to shrink. On the 4th day, she got the email. The scholarship committee had decided to continue her funding, pending ongoing good behavior and adherence to program values. It wasn't a victory. It was a warning. But it was enough. Michelle found her crying in her apartment that evening. Not from relief, but from exhaustion. I'm so tired, Jade whispered. I'm tired of fighting for things other people take for granted. Tired of proving I deserve space. Tired of being punished for being visible. I know, honey. I know. And the worst part? Jade looked up, tears streaming. I miss him. I miss someone I barely know. How stupid is that? It's not stupid. It's human. Michelle squeezed her hand. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Jade thought about Dominic's hands, steady and warm. About the way he'd looked at her in the jazz club, like she was the only person in the world. About the choice he'd made to see her when everyone else wanted her invisible. She pulled out her phone and stared at his number. Then she made a call. Dominic was in a meeting when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and went still. We need a break, he announced, already standing. His associates exchanged looks but didn't argue. He stepped into the hallway and answered. Jade. I kept my scholarship. Her voice was quiet but steady. And my apartment. I fought for them and I won. I'm glad. You deserve to win. I know. That's why I'm calling. She took a breath. I'm calling to tell you that I don't need you to fix my life. I don't need you to protect me or save me or make problems disappear. I can handle my own battles. I understand. But, her voice softened, I think I might want you anyway. Not as a protector or a rescuer. Just as you. The person who saw me when I was invisible. Who danced with me when I felt worthless. Who told me the truth even when it was hard. Dominic's chest tightened. Jade, my world is complicated. Dangerous. Being with me means dealing with scrutiny, with judgment, with people who'll always question your motives. I know. But here's what I've learned. Being black and poor and fighting for space in this world? That was already dangerous. That already meant scrutiny and judgment. At least with you, I don't have to be invisible while I face it. I can't promise it'll be easy. I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for real. She paused. Are you willing to try? Not to fix me or save me, but just to be with me? As equals. Dominic closed his eyes, something close to prayer moving through him. Yes. God, yes. Then meet me. Same jazz club. Tonight at 9. I'll be there. 6 months later, Jade walked across the stage at her graduation ceremony. The crowd was modest. Fellow students, faculty, a few family friends. But in the back row, impossible to miss, sat Dominic Gravano in a simple suit, no entourage, no fanfare. When they called her name, he stood and applauded. A few people turned to look, recognition flickering across their faces. But Dominic didn't care, and neither did Jade. She'd earned this. Not because of him, but in spite of everything. And he was there to witness it, not as her savior, but as someone who believed she deserved to be seen. After the ceremony, they went to their jazz club. The same corner booth, the same dim lighting. But everything was different now. Dance with me, Jade said, extending her hand. Dominic smiled. A real smile, rare and genuine. Always. They moved to the small floor as the band played. This time, Jade wasn't trembling. She was relaxed in his arms, her head resting against his chest, his hand steady at her waist. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me. Even when I didn't want to be seen. Thank you for letting me stay. Even when I didn't deserve it. They danced in the quiet space they'd created together. Two people from different worlds who'd found something neither expected. A love built not on rescue or redemption, but on the radical act of seeing each other's humanity and choosing it anyway. The song ended. They didn't let go. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, they'd found something rare. A moment of peace in a complicated world, and the promise that they'd face whatever came next together. Not as protector and protected. Not as powerful and powerless. Just as two people who'd learned that real love isn't about saving each other. It's about seeing each other and choosing to stay. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.